I will say, like, when I did that 10-day silent retreat, it was like cross-legged and with my arms, on my knees. But there was none of, what we might conjure up in our mind about, people on a mountaintop. It was nothing like that. In a sense, when people ask me a similar question about my Judaism growing up, like if I kept Shabbat or I kept kosher, I can honestly say yes, just to the extent of what I understood it was. I would have coaches and different individuals because I was always focused on the physical and I had really great skills, but the mental side was kind of untrained.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Between Two Worlds. Today we have a guest on, and want to introduce yourself?
My name is Solomon Berezin.
Welcome. So you go by, is there a Hebrew version of Solomon? I was actually thinking about that today.
Shlomo.
Shlomo, okay. So you go by Solomon, though? Yeah,
well, it kind of depends. Sometimes I'll also go by Shlomo or Shlomo Ezra. My middle name is Ezra.
Okay.
It's kind of a weird, how some names have or not some names, but all names have a Hebrew name as well. Or all Hebrew names have an English name. It's weird how Solomon comes from Shlomo. Like Shlomo's peace, and Solomon sounds so like king, like the king.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was actually in Starbucks the other day, and I said, usually in Starbucks I have to explain my name, like sometimes I'll just say I'm Rebecca because it's like so much easier. But this lady like pronounced it perfectly, and she was like, I actually have a sister, Rivka, who's living in Israel. I was like, oh my god, it was like one, it's funny. Okay, so let's give some background. I mean, I met Solomon. You walked into a coffee shop that I was in, and you knew one of my friends.
The person I was with knew one of your friends.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was like editing actually one of our episodes, and I heard him say like I have a podcast, and like I feel like nowadays a lot of people have podcasts, but like in our community not a lot of people do, and I feel like it's kind of a new thing. So I like literally turned around and I was like yes, and then we just started talking, and I was like, you should come on, we should discuss things. And that was literally like what, 3 months, well, how long ago was that? Maybe 2 months ago?
July.
End
of well, because I got into New York at the middle of June, but it must have been like towards the end of June or in July.
Right. So I mean, just like we kept on just trying to figure out a date, and we're here.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
We made it.
We made it.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Of course, we're excited. And
it's nice to meet Chaya as well.
So nice to meet
this
you.
Is Chaya.
Yeah, my version of the story was is just receiving the call from Rivka being like, I met this guy, he's going to come on our podcast, it's going to be great. And then
have a guest.
Yeah. So yeah, we're super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about, Solomon has, been through a journey when in regards to like finding Judaism. And so we're just going to talk about that journey and like the between two worlds. Like this is the epitome of between the two different worlds and, all that stuff. So, can you start with like giving us a background of like your childhood? Like what was your affiliation with Judaism growing up, if you had any?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I grew up in I guess I would call it conservative Jewish family. I didn't really know at the time or like growing up that there was a difference per se. Like I grew up in going to Christian schools, public schools, like where I was pretty much the only Jew. But I kind of liked that added uniqueness. But I also went to Wednesday and Sunday school, had a bar mitzvah. We celebrated the holidays with very close family friends. We went to, we would go to Shabbat services on Friday night or Saturday where we would drive. But so in a sense, when people ask me a similar question about my Judaism growing up, like if I kept Shabbat or I kept kosher, I can honestly say yes, just to the extent of what I understood it was. Like I wasn't, maybe I had
it's not like you knew better.
Yeah, maybe I had a little bit of an awareness of what Orthodox even means, but at a young age and growing up, how much of us can really say that we thought intently about something like why are people living this kind of way and all of that. But so Baruch Hashem was always raised with a strong Jewish identity, and because my parents have a very strong connection with their Yiddishkeit. And just a side note, as I learn more and practice more of Orthodox Judaism, I begin to learn more about a history of my ancestors from both of my parents' side. So that's really cool. But yeah, just that's a little bit of a background of growing up in Judaism.
Right. So you knew you were Jewish and you had like some sort of connections here and there, but it wasn't like you weren't like fully immersed in like all the
not in like the Orthodox world.
And you said
like it was funny that yeah, go ahead.
You said you went to Sundays and Wednesday school, correct?
Yeah.
Was that Chabad?
No. It was a conservative shul. Conservative, I think it was more than reform, but yeah, conservative. I think the only really time I remember I only knew about the positive side of growing up is I didn't know there was really, a reform, conservative, or Orthodox. I thought, and this is true, that a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. I didn't really know about these differences. It wasn't until college sometime I read this book called Boy Chicks in the Hood. It was like a comedic book written by a Reformed Jew who went all around spending Shabbat, I think, at different Orthodox groups. And so I would read about this Bobover and Chabad and Satmar, and I was like, what? I thought that was just like, I thought everybody was just Jewish. I thought it was just on the like Catholic world that there were these different kinds of, sects of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So when was the first time where you were like, okay, I need to understand more about this religion or like go deeper in what this is all about?
So it's an interesting question because I kind of got to that place of like, well, I want to find out more, but it didn't come through like being immersed in Judaism, I think. But probably I would say through and towards the end of college. However, it was probably added influence that my oldest brother, who lives in Jerusalem now, he practices Chabad. And so I went to, it kind of starts with high school and when I was going to college, but I played basketball and thank God I got it to play in college in Dallas. And so in high school, because I always had a strong connection with Judaism, I was never really worried about where I would go or what would happen, Chas v'shalom, but basketball was like my one-track mind. And I had an intention and vision at the time that I would play like in Israel and just however far I could play because I just loved the game. And one of the kind of best offer I got to play was in Dallas, and it happened to be a Catholic school. And my mom, kind of nervous, sending her little boy, who in her words, we're sending a sheep to a wolf's hen. She was kind of worried that I would be going, surrounded by non-Jews and non-Jewish girls, all that kind of stuff. And
was she correct in that worry?
Yeah, I dated. But it was fun. Yeah, but funny enough, it's like we have that kind of perspective, but I'm also so grateful for it, and like Hashem always has this kind of guiding hand. But funny enough, the Chabad rabbi in Dallas, there's a couple, but one of the main ones, he happened to be taking graduate philosophy classes at the university. So I guess I could say in a way like he was my one shliach, right? Even though in the university I was one of the only, if not the only Jew, but there were a few Jewish professors, and because we know that if your mom's Jewish, you're Jewish. I actually have a few friends. One who is a really good friend that she's Jewish. She just doesn't really know that. But I digress with that. So I would go when it wasn't basketball season, or even during some of the school years. I would meet with the rabbi there, like when he would come, so before his classes in the evening. And I would also go into the in-town Chabad of Dallas for some Shabbosim, or like Friday nights usually when it wasn't basketball season or if I didn't have practice. And so obviously that kind of surrounding had a little bit of an influence. And then going to the different events, being surrounded by other Jewish individuals, and then also getting connected with the other Rebbeim there, and the Chabad Shluchim. And I remember also learning, like I was learning GPS of the soul with one of the rabbis there. But just to kind of come to really the chunk of answering your question was towards the end of college, I'd experienced some injuries that kept me from playing basketball. And that was, I would work really hard and practice a lot of the time. And these injuries led me to really begin to learn about and practice a lot of what I coach today, which is, mindful practices and being present and learning to rest and what does rest actually mean, because I was always like on the court practicing, like all physical. And I was also I was very fascinated and passionate about anything to boost my performance on the court.
I could definitely relate to you on this one. She's very much.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about how you wrote about the flow state, and just that was your inspiration to pursue your health and wellness and things like that. And so, yeah, we should totally talk about that. But continue what you were saying.
Well, no, and I'll transition into it, because actually kind of getting that, because that's kind of what led me most, I think, into Judaism, and not into Judaism, but into wanting to adopt more of the practices, and that'll also lead to like why specifically Chabad and all of that. But so, I would have coaches and different individuals, because I was always focused on the physical and I had really great skills, but the mental side was kind of untrained. So then I started to learn about that a little bit during those times when I was injured and I couldn't physically practice. And also learned about meditation. And it started just as a way to, boost my performance and, how to build confidence and what goes on between the ears, self-talk, a lot of positive psychology, all that kind of stuff. And just to kind of conclude a little bit about that now, but in a sense, the more I learned about meditation and how it wasn't just helping my performance on the court, but just being present in every area of life, it opened my perspectives to then, recognize when I'm living like in a state of fear, or when I'm in a state of curiosity and in that state of flow, and I could then learn about different things. So then I would, and I have it. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask.
Go ahead.
Like, what were you lacking? Like that made you think like, okay, I'm missing something, so I have to like learn more about. And you got so attached to this like learning about all this Jewish and religious stuff. And I guess you're saying that like you were missing that mindfulness that it really taught you.
A little bit towards I would say the main, so it was actually then at the summer of like 2018. So I had graduated from college, and I was beginning to have a change of heart with playing basketball at the university. And I was going to have a additional year to play, because I redshirted, meaning one of my years of eligibility didn't count when I had an injury. And the university offered a 4+1 program. So I had an opportunity where I could have played one final year of basketball and earn my master's degree. But that summer I was helping out with Tamir Goodman, if you're familiar with the name, the Jewish Jordan, at his basketball camp. And I was recognizing that this unfamiliar feeling to me, like I was having a change of heart, like I didn't really want to be on the court so much. And I was, recovering also from a concussion at the time. And when I was finally moving back, getting close to home, like flying back home, and I'd already got an apartment with a couple friends, like as if I'm going to be there for the new year, and signed up for classes. And I came home, and it's actually funny we're talking about it because I think it was about this time 3-4 years ago. It's also really cool that it happens in the month of Elul when I reflect on it, because I'm like, oh, of course, it happens during Elul. But
just to
but
explain,
I came home.
To our listeners, that Elul is just a month where we like reflect on everything from the past year to like bring in the new Jewish year. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, good. And just to keep some of the details simple, because sometimes I like to share a lot of detail. My parents went out of town, and they asked me to come back to Houston to take care of the house and the pets. And so I had really just 2 weeks or so of alone time. And I began to reflect, and because I was starting to feel this unfamiliar stress and fear towards my life around basketball and going to the university again. And I began to observe my life per se, like what are the thoughts and feelings I have around different things in my life, different people, the game of basketball. And one of the main questions I would ask myself was, what was it about basketball that I was so passionate about that I was spending most of my time and hours and energy into? And this brings up what Chai was brought up earlier, that the kind of intuitive response that came to me was the state of the flow, the zone that I would get into when I'm playing the game. When I was so present, and it was like I wasn't even there, and the hoop would look like a hula hoop, and I couldn't miss a shot. My moves would be like, I would do moves I hadn't even practiced before. Even if I turned the ball over, I wouldn't judge the situation, and it would only lead to something greater than had I not turned it over wouldn't have happened. It was just like, wow, that's what I was so passionate about. Even more so than like other aspects of the game. And so when I would meditate on kind of that, I had this sense that, well, if that's what I'm really passionate about, I have a sense we can how do we live life in that state? Where you're responding to, where you're really present, you're responding to relationships really well. You're meeting new individuals, like you start up a conversation with myself, at the coffee shop, or, you're feeling healthy, and therefore you're thinking clearly, you're able to respond to situations that are somewhat turbulent or intense with a sense of ease and calm, and your connection with Hashem, with God, is very strong. All those kind of facets. And that also led into, well, then I would consider, well, what are the things that facilitate being in that state of flow? And those were the things I was so passionate. I had a natural inclination to learning about: nutrition, fitness, meditation, mindset, getting into this state of zone, like how to facilitate, how to make it easier to get into that, hack it in a way.
What is flow state?
So
good. That's a good question.
I do have some resources. I have some resources of some individuals, but there's one. I think the term was coined by a psychologist professor. I can't pronounce his last name so well, but it's
something Russian, right? Something
I think
like
Polish. It's called a book called Flow, but
Okay.
he analyzes exactly what it is. It's a Mikhaili Csikszentmihalyi, I think his name is. There's other contemporary writers and researchers about it, but essentially it's like I was describing when I would play the game. The moments when you're so immersed in the present that it's almost like you're not even there, and I like to say, like, God is working through you. Like it could be in a conversation like this.
Dissociated
No, not
yeah, but not, I
not
wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't use
yeah,
that.
Right,
People
'cause
who
that
actually
does have like a negative
more like
connotation.
super
It
aligned.
does. It's funny because
So, like you're not like feeling
there's so much
like
overlap
everything,
going
like,
on. My God. Yeah, but Rivka, you know, I actually was speaking to someone about this because it's very much meditation gives you that same feeling of flow state where it's like if you're doing meditation properly, then you're kind of egoless, right? Like we spoke about this last episode actually, but we had a problem with it. The last
Right.
episode, it didn't really come out. But the funny thing is that many people who are, you know, heavy into psychology and especially trauma, you'll explain what like meditation, what the state of meditation you want to acquire, that like egolessness, and they'll be like, that's bad. That's just disassociating. That's like, you know, floating
Right.
above your body. Like, what does that mean? They get like very turned off by those terms. So it's not disassociative because that's a mental,
Okay.
that's a disorder. That's bad. It's just a state of like intense. It's like immersion, like what's all
Awareness.
I mean, in
imagine,
general, I'm a very like. Sorry, no. Just in general, I'm a very like pragmatic person. Like, I want to know, like, okay, what does this mean that like you're in a flow
Yeah.
state and like, oh, you're immersed. Like, what are you feeling in the moment? And if you're feeling like you're outside of your body, then like you're not. Then that does sound like this is.
Well, Rivka, have you ever done something, and it could be a conversation or maybe written an essay or played an instrument, where like you're not even aware of, in a good way, time. You're not thinking about time. You're just so involved in doing
Right.
it, and the time just
Yes.
kind of breezes by. Let's say like 2 hours go by, and then it finishes, and you're like, oh wow, it's been 2 hours.
Right.
Like it felt. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
sure.
kind of like that.
Okay, got
But
it.
it's like a great awareness. Like you're aware of things that are going on. So it's almost like you're a witness and at the same time very actively involved in something.
Okay, now here's my question to you. I always thought the thing about flow state is that it's a very specific time. Like it can't happen all the time. If you're in flow, you know, like there's a very specific time when you're in flow, and that's when like everything is hitting the right notes, right? Like every
Yeah.
possible thing is on its uphill. But that's not life. Like, so you're saying your goal is to make flow state like your life, or to have that awareness while being present. I guess my question more is is that a code that you've cracked? Like you're able to be in flow state consistently for hours at a time?
Well, it depends. You know, we can't always be perfect for sure. There are those times when, you know, you're like so in it, and it's like this thing is happening to this thing, and you're just like in the flow. Of course, we're never going to be perfect, and however, I do think that state of flow, in a sense, is connected to the era of Mashiach, when we are very aligned with Hashem, and I feel like that state of flow, in a sense, is very one with God, and in a sense, because we can't always be so aligned, you know, there's different events that happen in our circumstances, and we react to different things in our life, but it's being able to course correct and minimize the time from, let's say, something unfortunate or unpleasant happens, and it knocks you out of that zone. But how long are you going to allow that event or thing to knock you out and be in a sour mood, let's say, until you're back in it? So it's the different things that help facilitate it, and we can also talk about those, you know, exercise, nutrition, sleep, meditation, mindset, other tools, journaling, that help you be in a state of physical and mental health. So it facilitates being able to course correct, because there's always events in our life that are so sudden and surprising. So it's
Right,
kind
so
of
it's
like
not
what
that you're
teshuva is, in a way, you know?
Yeah.
It's like returning.
It's not that you're always going to be in that state, but you kind of have that formula to, like, if you need it, you kind of have it in your back pocket, I guess.
Correct. And then,
So-
you know, when there are different events that kind of do cause you to get out of it per se. It's only there to create a greater sense of flow. That's why in my podcast that you were talking about is called Ebb and Flow, like the Hasidic concept Ratzo Veshuv. But when there's such a great, Ratzo, like the running, and there's a lot of intensity, it can lead to a greater flow.
Mm-hmm. Right. Sometimes you need to be like in an ebb for a little bit of time to really get a flow.
Exactly.
You gotta just like run. Cool. Back to your journey with like becoming religious and all that.
How it led to it.
Yeah. I was gonna ask another question, but is there anything else you wanted to?
Well, I can sum up a little bit of how, in a sense, all of that leading into the health coaching and recognizing that that's what I was really passionate about. It kind of naturally, in a way, led to more curiosity about what is Jewish practices and what is Jewish mysticism say about all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So, yeah.
And was there a lot of, did you find, I mean, I'm assuming, but like you found a lot of like correlation between Judaism, mysticism, and like this flow?
Yeah. I feel like, and I actually read, if you're familiar with Rabbi Dov Ber Cohen, he lives in Jerusalem, and I got to meet with him last summer. He has a book called Mastering Life. But he traveled like around the world. When he graduated college, he would like teach English, and he became like a monk before recognizing his own Jewish roots and all that kind of stuff. And he said a line that was very similar to how I felt. He said that Judaism is the ultimate yoga. And I have found that, in a sense, Judaism is that ultimate flow state. If you're able to practice it with a harmony of, love and fear, in a sense, or doing halacha and the laws, quotation, in a way of fluidity, it is like you're in that state of flow.
Right. And it's not just like a burden. It's like time.
Exactly.
Kind of, it's just like you become like, I guess, one with the halacha. Like it kind of becomes like your mission and your passion.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's the goal. It's not always so easy, but
yeah.
So I wanted to ask, like, were you? I'm assuming in college you made friends there, and you said you like dated a few people that were not Jewish, or your parents were like not so religious. Like, were you worried about what they thought of you? Did you have a hard time like explaining to them what exactly you were doing?
To the parents?
To your parents, to your friends, siblings, I don't know, relatives?
Well, practice...
was there like an easy synthesis between, this secular life that you were living and now kind of taking on a new religious one?
In regard to friends, a little bit easier because I wasn't so much becoming observant until like after I had moved back home to Houston. And so some of my college friends I wasn't keeping as much in communication with, but they probably experienced me when I was very transitioning, because that was when I was practicing meditation. And so my interests and things, like you have interests in college, are kind of transitioning. So they probably experienced that. But some of my good friends from high school that I'm still, thank God, in contact with, they find it really cool. Usually, actually, I find that my, the secular or non-Jewish friends actually think this stuff is really cool, and they're more supportive in a way. Parents, I don't think so. I don't think there was a little bit of like a revving up of the engine per se here and there, but because my oldest brother had already become religious and practicing at the time, it made it somewhat easier, but they have their concerns.
Right. Do you want to share any of their concerns, or you don't have to?
Well, just
I'm just
what?
curious what
Yeah, yeah.
the parents are experiencing, you know what I'm saying, in this situation and what makes them so worried because like me and Kai growing up religious, it's like we're like not partying and we're not doing, you know what I'm saying? Like we're like good kids, like versus like the
If
secular
anything,
world.
our parents are concerned about us turning more secular, like,
Right.
and I guess, you know,
But I'm saying like
the
even more
concern
than
because,
that, like
yeah.
being religious, if you're keeping it, like you're pretty much like the goody of like the secular world, you know? So like what, you know, I'm curious what like concerns are for parents for people to become like more religious, but I guess maybe they think it's a cult or like I just totally
Yeah, perhaps in a way, or that it does take you away from other aspects of life, or that you can't, or that it's very limiting. Like how are you going to be able to do this? And then also worries about getting a job when you're following those kind of ways, or that you're losing, your youth because you're going to learn all this different kind of stuff. And
right. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I could see how it could be a barrier, especially something like kosher, which basically limits a lot. So
Right. What was like what was the hardest part of like taking up all these religious obligations? And I mean, did you take it all at once, or was it like a slow, gradual thing? And what did you have like the hardest time with, or the easiest time with?
It was not all at once. It was more of a progression. So because it kind of started with the health journey per se, and the health coaching, and the practicing of meditation. Like Shabbos was probably one of the easier and most rational things to kind of join, because I was like, oh, that's very healthy for me to take a day away from technology, and spend it in silence or with a community. I loved it. I can share more about that as well. Like that probably came about when I in December 2019 I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat. That's when I felt.
get out.
That's
I've
when
always
I
wanted
felt
to
like
do something
I
like
really
that. Tell me about
yeah.
that.
That's when I felt like I really connected with Shabbat. Kosher. I think kosher. I only started keeping like fully kosher. Including, meaning like with the dishes and all the equipment, last summer, I think, yeah. But because I kept like a healthy diet per se, I wouldn't really eat out at so many restaurants anyways. So I would eat mostly like fish, or I wouldn't even eat some of the chicken or meat at some places unless it was a healthy or like an organic restaurant. So in that sense, it wasn't so challenging. It actually became a little bit more challenging in some ways to bring on kosher, because not everything kosher, unfortunately, means it's healthy. That's a whole
Right.
nother conversation.
Yeah, that's not.
I would say the most challenging. I think your last question, the last part of your question, was the most challenging parts to adopt.
Yeah.
Would have to be, at least to date, starting like wearing a yarmulke and tzitzis. Even though I really connect
Interesting.
with them now, and
Yeah.
the reason I say it is because preface with how I practice meditation, and with meditation you're connecting or getting in tune with Hashem, which is within you. You're getting beyond different material and physical things, or how you identify with, being an athlete or being a student, or all those different external things, and you're really going within. So in that sense, when I got to a place where it's like wearing a kippah or wearing tzitzis, I remember thinking like, this is just a physical item. I don't need that to express Judaism. I'm Jewish within. So that took,
I think, yeah.
some
I think that's also a
meditation to
struggle.
really, yeah.
Sorry, I think we're having like a little bit of a lag here, so that's why. No, I was just gonna say that I think it's a hard thing for girls to go through as well, because we have all these laws of like tznius where we have to dress a certain way, and we're like, well, if like Judaism is within. I remember I was a counselor for girls, teenage girls, and we would have like Friday night for bring-ins, and that was something that came up a lot, where it was like, if we're like, if beauty's all about within and everything's about like what's within, then why are we putting such an emphasis on like what we wear and what is on the like? Why can't we just like wear whatever we want, and then it's about? But it's kind of like the answer is in the question, where it's like it's because it's what's within that you have to like protect yourself.
Precisely.
So it's interesting.
Precisely. Well, and it's actually that is how you express yourself outwards. In a sense, it's like it's one thing to like your external doesn't express who you are. Who you are is within. But then there's another level. It's like, well, who I am within, I also really want to express outwards.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, it'd be great to hear what
there's more deeper with that as well.
Yeah, that can be like a whole. I mean, we actually had a whole episode on this and our thoughts on it. But yeah, it's a whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Hi, what were you gonna say?
I mean, can you hear me? Is this registering?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I want to press you on some points about your meditation, because I think that's so interesting. I've yet to meet a lot of people who have meditated before, and it's specifically gone into that state where you, I guess, describe it as flow state or connecting to God directly. But before that, I'd actually like to hear what you think, I guess, the most rewarding thing about becoming religious has been for you. Because, you shared what the most challenging thing has been, so.
The most rewarding part of religious?
Observance, yeah.
Yeah, observance. That's a good question. Well, it itself, in a sense, like schar mitzvah. It's in a sense, it's. I mean, like I could come up with reasons, like you're connected with other individuals that, in a sense, are very aligned and on a very foundational level. So you have that sense of community. You have almost like set.
Kind of checks all the boxes.
In a way, yeah. You have those set also times, like, because I love self improvement per se, and like schedule. I really enjoy also, how we have different months and how they're very designated for a different theme. And so you can kind of really set up a system per se of how you observe and learn different things at different times. I mean, those are a little bit of rewards, but really it itself is the reward. And I don't mean that to just say it to sound like so special, but in itself, but in a sense, it really itself is a reward, like a lot of all parts of it, because in a sense, the inward journey, the spiritual journey, and the health journey has, the more and more I've come to learn about myself and my own interests, it has led into that.
Right. And do you feel like now, like this is like really like you're really like expressing yourself, like your deepest part of yourself?
Working on it.
Okay. We all are. What?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Rivka. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna ask, like, why did you specifically choose Chabad? But like, I'm realizing, like, in your story, you kind of did you only have like an interaction with Chabad when it came to religious stuff, or did you like look at a lot of different sects and like choose?
I think probably because of the close access to, like, with the rabbis, and then the close familiarity, that had a strong influence.
Right.
It's funny, actually.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If one of my, if I was secular and a Chabad rabbi was taking a philosophy class with me, I'd be like, yeah, that is a green flag. Like, I'd want to chill with that dude all day. Did you actually talk with him?
Yeah, we would sit and learn once or twice a week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. I would say that definitely had an influence. the so funny enough, actually, I didn't, because like I mentioned towards at the beginning that I wasn't really aware of these different sects of Judaism. I kind of thought
Right.
Chabad was like the only Orthodox.
That's right.
That's funny.
So like actually when it's funny because I would go then to celebrate Shabbat with, let's say, a modern Orthodox friend, and I wasn't so aware of like some of the other customs. Or I remember being at, this is actually just before Pesach, but I was visiting a friend, and I thought a lot of the apparently things that are customs for Chabad, I thought they were part of halacha. So like one of the Rebbitzins, she had a 3-year-old, and I said, "Oh, you must be lighting candles for the first time." And the Rebbitzin looked at me and she said, "You must be Chabad."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, that's just a custom." So that was funny.
Oh yeah.
But I would say the real answer per se to why Chabad, also because I have learned and looked into more, because when you expand your awareness and learn about different rebbeim and different tzaddikim, definitely grew interest into learning about the different sects and the different teachers. But I would say because of my practice of meditation and wanting to live life in a state of fluidity, like not so rigid, but to have structure, but to do it in such a dance, like in a flow, that I really connected with Chabad, because it's such a strong focus on the halachas per se, and even its customs, but to do it in such a loving and a fluid way, that it's not rigid,
Right.
and it's just so strict in that. And that's what's beautiful about Hasidus as
Right.
well.
Which is so interesting because I mean that goes into like the next question I wanted to ask about like about meaning and like living a meaningful life, and like if like maybe, and I don't know, I'm not saying my opinion on this, I'm just like thinking like maybe like everyone has a different path that means that they are going to live like a flow state, because there are so many people who are religious and grow up religious and they feel the last thing from flow, they feel restricted, they feel suffocated. So do you think that like religion is something that like or Chabad or Judaism is something that like everyone would benefit from, or is there just different paths in life for people?
That's a great question. And I've also thought about it often, and specifically because I have found like there's a lot of, let's say, Jews that I look up to that aren't practicing the same way per se, or even Orthodox. And I felt like in my own journey per se of meditating and interests of life in life led me to want to practice more of what religious is teaching. And so I would be curious in a sense, and I would ask a similar question, like why is I'm doing similar things than these other Jews are, and I'm really looking up to the work that they're doing in coaching and business, and they're really contributing to other people. And so I had that thought, like why isn't it? I used to have the thought, why isn't the same kind of practicing of like meditation and going inward, leading others to practice Judaism similarly, but I recognize that, and I can't judge somebody else's journey, and every neshama has its own unique journey, that really just to focus in a sense on where I'm guided and what's resonating with me, and not to judge other people's, not to say that I was judging, but it's an interesting question. I think we all can continue to be curious about. I definitely feel like in some way, I think we're all moving towards more of like religious practices, but because we're understanding more of the like meaning and truth behind it. Like it's not just because it's not just dogma. It's not like somebody's just telling you to do something and oh, you just do that because, you know, you're Jewish. Like I guess it's one part of it, but it's also because we're learning more meaning and behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in a sense, because also I do think that I guess people do have to go through their own journey, and like like even if that all brings them back to like religion and like this beautiful way of life, like people have to find it themselves. And that's what I find so fascinating about people who are like Baal Teshuva, people who didn't grow up religious and chose it. It's like, wow, you got to choose this like for real, you know? You got to experience the other side and you got to choose this, while me and Chaya and a lot of people just like grew up like this. So like there's other factors that that go into play. Like I'm not going to become sick because like even if I was interested in it, like my family, like it just gets so complicated. It's like, okay, it's a beautiful way of life. I love it. So I'm not going to experiment otherwise, but it lacks that choice a little bit. So I don't know what the balance there is, but it's interesting to me.
It may be something for you and anybody else that's having a similar, just curious thought to really dive into, meaning like, take some time to think about it and even just kind of trace that thought and see, well, what are you really yearning for? What are you really
right.
wanting, per se?
Yeah.
So
I'm
before you lead on to more questions, I do have a couple practical questions about your meditation phase, because you said you were meditating before, I guess. Was it before you started becoming religious or started learning? I'm not sure exactly, but when you talk about meditation, do you mean, closing your eyes, sitting on a cushion, I don't know how long, in that deep, relaxed state? Is that the kind of meditation we're talking about?
Not that no.
Gotcha.
Definitely different practices. I will say, like, when I did that 10-day silent retreat, it was like cross-legged and with my arms, on my knees, but there was none of, what we might conjure up in our mind about, people on a mountaintop. It was nothing like that. Nowadays it's sitting in a chair and, arms lightly rested on the knees, doing a little gratitude, just closing the eyes, being grateful for things, doing a little breathing, and really there's a lot of focuses I can go into and then we can share, but that's kind of the practical. It's like just sitting in a chair quietly with some silence or listening to a guided.
And you do that?
I do every day.
How do you do that a day?
I would say on average about an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow. It's a long time.
Wow.
Sometimes a little longer.
It's pretty cool.
Got you. And then so I started meditating also around 2 years ago. I started meditating because I've been very curious about getting into that state where I'm not there. I really like that, like that experience. I think that's probably connecting to the deepest source of who we are. And so I guess maybe you can talk to this a little bit, but I think there's some sort of conflict with having like that goal-oriented type of setting when you're in meditation, because really I don't know how to arrive to that state, whereas much as it's just being present. And I always feel like there's constant obstacles to being present, and then therefore not being able to get into that flow state of just being completely connected to the deepest part. So do you arrive at that state, or is it more just like just relaxing, following your breath, just letting things be? I don't know if you have...
Yeah, you're observing the thoughts and what's coming up, but also a key component of it is not judging it. So in a sense of, without, you wouldn't a person wouldn't look at it as like, oh, I'm doing this good or bad, or I'm in the flow state or I'm out. Like you're really focused in the act. So you're observing the thoughts and you have a focal point, and you're not judging the thought as like good or bad. It's more so with a most objective kind of mind that we can practice, which is, something can be unpleasant or pleasant. It can be gross or feeble. It's really like a scientist doing an experiment, like let's say with a beaker. He himself is separate from the beaker. If the beaker's boiling with water, he's not like, ooh, that's hot. He's able to kind of witness it. That's at least to get to a present moment. That's one aspect of.
That's really cool.
One aspect of.
You're inspiring me to meditate.
Oh, come on. I've been trying to get Rivka to meditate forever. Solomon comes on and you're sold.
Yeah, but you're...
Hey, you guys must be really close then. That's why, how when we try and tell our family or close ones things, it doesn't work. But when they hear it from somebody else.
Right. You need a fresh perspective. No, also like when Chaya tries to get me, when you try to get me into, you're like, let's meditate together. And I'm like, but no. But this like sounds like really like practical. I need like practical like tips. So this sounds really practical to just like judge your thoughts just like objectively and you're not in it. That's really cool.
On my website, I have a guide where I write a guide to meditation, an ultimate guide. I also have one for journaling. I can send you a link and you can check out like the different ones that I've practiced. Like I started out with an app called Headspace when I was playing sports. And I talk in there and also mention and share interviews I have with rabbis who teach more of like a Jewish meditation or things of that sort.
Very cool.
And I have guided I have a guided meditation on like YouTube.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So one of the reasons why I actually stopped meditating was because I couldn't arrive at that separation or of being that witness of seeing my thoughts as separate to my identity. So, and it was very frustrating because the whole point why I was meditating was for this goal, and I just felt like it was so far away, and I also felt like why should it be far away when it's right here? Right, like it's the present moment. It was very confusing to me. So maybe have some tips.
So, Chaya, I'm gonna challenge you because I would argue that means you were actually doing it correct. So you should continue. You should continue it because we have many thoughts, and we think maybe 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And you have a certain routine to your day. And then when you decided to meditate and to be able to become present and be more present in your life, you decided to set time aside, however long it was, 10, 15 minutes, and whether it was with a guided meditation or just in quiet, you were sitting your body down and you were practicing the breathing and focusing on where your thoughts go. And so in that process of getting present, the mind is going to wander. And the more and more you practice it, especially when you get out of your routine, let's say you, I don't know if you did it in the morning, but somebody does it in the morning at a time when normally they're either sleeping or they are going out and doing, have their schedule. And now they're training, in a sense, they're building a new habit of I'm sitting my body down and I'm going to become really present and I'm going to focus on my breath and I'm going to focus on my thoughts and the sensations of my body. The mind is going to get active and it's going to feel like you're actually getting further away from it because the body is so used to its familiar routine. And now you're bringing in something new. So it's going to argue with you. It's going to say, excuse me, Chaya, we're supposed to be sleeping right now. Can you get your butt back into bed or whatever you have to do at that time? So the fact so it's actually a challenge and a great awareness to have, and Chassidus and the Rebbe, especially like in Living Torah videos, talks about this often. But the more active your mind is getting, and it feels like you're further from the goal, so to speak, it actually means you're closer and you should continue doing it.
All right. I guess, Rivka, you want to meditate with me? I'm kidding.
So we're doing this.
Okay, I'll get back into it.
Very cool. That's interesting. It's
Yeah, that is.
there's
cool.
so many times, and me and Kai talk about this all the time. We always end up like talking about like, well, it's just a balance of things. It's this and it's that. So like, I feel like all the time is another thing where it's like, the more it feels unnatural, the like more you're supposed to like lean into it or like just like push yourself past that like comfort zone. I feel like it's a
Yeah, it is something that I've definitely heard, but I guess it's hard to not to convince yourself out of what you're feeling or what you're thinking, but not to like embrace it. I guess because that's what you're trying to do when you're meditating, just embrace it. So I guess, yeah.
Do you miss anything about the secular life? Is there anything that you're like, that would be nice? Yeah, I don't know.
Do I miss anything? I was talking with somebody close with me yesterday because I was showing her the questions you sent me a kind of, and I was thinking, and I was like, do I miss anything? And I would say jokingly, like, there was really some of the probably food and nutrition that I would eat, not like restaurants wise, but like some healthy kind of coffee blends or things that are in the process of getting the kosher certification.
Right.
Haven't yet.
But I feel like mostly, especially in New York, I mean, you pretty much can get anything, no? What's in coffee, like in the kosher coffee, that's different?
Well, no, there was this. So because I've learned nutrition, and I'm very passionate about nutrition and its connection with brain health and also spiritual health. You might have heard about like healthy mushrooms, not like the psychedelics and not the ones you cook with, but there's like no.
Okay.
That's like on the opposite spectrum. So there's like so many types of mushroom, and so there's a fine large amount of some kind of in between where they're kind of like nootropics, and they've been studied and used by our like ancestors and tribes that have been now scientifically studied, and they have such like a strong source of antioxidants or building or connections like in the brain, which is called like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or just helping give more energy. And so there was this one company that blended it with coffee, and it really tasted good and had like a nice focus. And I've tried other coffee ones that do have a kosher certification, or some companies that have just the mushrooms kind of in powder form, but it still hasn't.
It's not as good.
No.
All right. We'll have to get that going.
But that's more of like a joke. The things that I miss, not so much. I sometimes probably a struggle I think I could share that I've thought about but really have had to meditate on is that I've felt that because of the journey per se and learning more about religion, I felt like at times maybe it had delayed, from a human perspective, delayed maybe how I could help other people, or like with the coaching practice, I wasn't always so fully invested in it because I was also learning a lot of Yiddishkeit and Chassidus, and felt like I had to learn more kind of stuff. Okay. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
Right.
But then also you really had to cultivate bitachon.
Yeah, which is also a challenge in and of itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're going to wrap up soon. We're close to an hour, but I did want to ask, I have another question. Do you ever like look at religion and think of like certain things that are like too restrictive, and this is like too, you were talking about dogma, like this is too dogmatic. Like, do you experience that? And do you ever want to just like, I don't know, change those things?
Yes, but then I do my best to learn more about it, because it may just be the way that I'm looking at it. So like there's been at times like I've wanted to there's been times I wanted to trim my beard per se. or cut it a little bit. And it would also be a little bit of like attention there. But I would do my best to like learn what does Chassidus say about it, what did the Rebbeim say about it, why, really kind of more meaning behind it.
Right. Try to feel more meaning behind it. Okay. But sometimes the meaning, like we get down to it, and this is a whole nother conversation, I don't think we'll have time for it, but like sometimes you get down to it and it's like, well, because this is what God wants of us. And that's kind of dogmatic in a way.
It can be, but it can also be actually the truest answer. Right. In a sense, like if you were to say, oh, if I drop this ball, it's gonna fall down. Like it's also true. Like there's gravity.
Right.
So some of the stuff, like some of the stuff, it's not like somebody's just telling you, but there's like something really there.
You just have to, right, I guess, package it in a way that's digestible. Even though that sounds very pessimistic, but I understand your perspective of like, I guess, always finding the perspective that works. And I think that there's a beauty in that. There really is. Because there is the kernel of truth at the bottom of it. So
yeah. I think there's such beauty to like just faith and like just a higher power. I think sometimes people are missing that, just like seeing beyond their small little lives. Like I think that's really powerful. Why are you laughing? So we'll wrap up. I just wanted to do one takeaway. I keep on saying we'll wrap up and then ask you one more question. Just like I want you to give.
Okay, you've been in the zone.
Yeah, I'm in the zone. I just want to get to like all your information, like share with everyone where they can find you and what's like your next step. But just literally last question. What advice would you give to somebody who like is secular and wants to connect to Judaism? Is there any like one piece of advice that you have for them?
Is secular, you say somebody who's secular and wants to connect with Judaism?
Yeah.
So in a sense, like to my younger self.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think, like for myself, I never was like, I want to, I don't think you should look at a goal per se, like, oh, like I want to be religious per se. Like set more of an intention of wanting to explore more of who you really are. And that will guide you.
You'll just like go through the process. Like feel
and have a genuine curiosity and really learning, how to, meditation is a big key part of it. How to really differentiate, between, we have that lots of different voices going on in our head, and sometimes different impulses, whether it's from society or from our parents. So to learn to really get to that quiet and still voice within, it'll be the best guide. Like it says in Pirkei Avos, nothing has taught me better than silence. Well, who was it that said that? I think it's in the last chapter in the first Mishnah. Let's see over here.
I wouldn't know by heart.
But really, I could find it, but
just being.
I would say
tapping into
find some
yourself.
Yeah, kind of similar to like if somebody were to want to be a doctor and I was a doctor and you would say like, what advice would you give? I would say don't look at the label, look at what you're really passionate about and interested in. So like somebody would say, oh, I love helping individuals, and in this aspect, like for myself, if I wasn't looking at being a doctor or a coach, I had these interests and I loved helping people and sitting one-on-one and coaching, kind of saying, or teaching.
Yeah.
And it it almost kind of naturally leads you into those things. So if you're exploring more of who you are, and not in an egotistical sense, I know that sometimes we can have that kind of confusion, but like genuine curiosity, like, you know, who am I really, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good advice. Okay, well,
Yeah, I love that.
I hope that helps.
yeah. So just share one more time, like, where everyone can find your meditation stuff that you were talking about, and also like what's your plans with it? Are you like continuing those type of coaching and stuff? And your podcast, you have a podcast. Share all the information.
Yes. So you can check out my website, Solomon Ezra, all O's in the first name, solomonezra.com. On there's also links to podcasts, my weekly newsletter, articles, YouTube channel. It's all there. And yeah, I was studying in yeshiva over the summer, but now I'm here in Houston and working on getting back into the podcast. So thank you for having me on, because it inspires me to get back in behind the mic and interviewing other people and getting into coaching. So yeah, I do see a couple individuals and welcoming some new clients to help them with their own health journey, holistic health. So their nutrition, mindset, meditation. Also because of my background in sports, certain of my clientele is athletes, so helping with their mental performance. And then I'd like to say everyday athletes with their energy, their mindset, and then, you know, all of it is interconnected. That's what I really am passionate about. So looking at the physical health, such as nutrition and exercise or lifestyle things and tools, and then the mindset, how to reframe situations, and also spiritual, your practice with meditation, connection with Hashem, prayer, all that.
So cool. I've learned so much from you today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
And good luck.
We're going to have to do another podcast on your nutrition and what you have to say about food, because I think that's super interesting about how that plays into your health, overall health and mindset.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Definitely. Well, just to give you a short answer on that, our gut has a direct connection to our brain through what's called a vagus nerve. And so what you eat is like information. And so whatever is going on in there, it sends a direct signal to your brain. So if you're eating on kind of crappy foods, you're not going to feel so, full of energy. And that's how it has a connection. But thank you guys so much.
Us to cut out sugar. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, there's more to it, like also the mindset part of it, like, because you can also get so tied up and constricted to a diet per se that itself becomes a Mitzrayim in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to help out and share any more resources with you guys, and you feel free to send me a text or for any information. I'd love to help out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Good luck with everything and all your endeavors. And I hope to speak to you soon.
You guys too. Keep up the practice of meditation.
I'll try. I'll really try.
Will do.